Welcome. Today we will explore the story of the great Shukracharya. We will trace his remarkable and complex journey, how a descendant of the highest sages, born in radiant light, became the mentor of beings often seen as forces of darkness, the Asuras. We will examine why he chose this path, the harsh trials he endured, and how he ultimately transformed into Graha, the celestial deity known as the planet Venus. This is not just a retelling of myth, but an analysis of how this powerful energy influences us even today. Behind Venus's outer beauty and charm often lies a strong will and profound knowledge, said in legends to even conquer death. Before we dive into the story, let's take a moment to appreciate the support that makes sharing such tales possible. Now, settle in comfortably and set aside your daily concerns. Ahead lies a story full of drama, wisdom, and paradoxes. To understand Shukracharya's character, we must first look at his genealogy. In ancient Indian tradition, family lines and clans intertwine deeply, with traits passing straight down the line. His father was the great sage Bhrigu, a monumental and complex figure. Bhrigu was no gentle elder sitting peacefully under a tree. He was one of the Prajapatis, the progenitors of humanity, born from the mind of Brahma himself. My name is Michael Reynolds. You're watching Ancient Secrets. Thanks for watching my content. I'd appreciate your subscription and like. Enjoy the video. Texts like the Vishnu Purana and Mahabharata describe Bhrigu as a bearer of immense spiritual power, bordering on temperamental. One famous myth recounts how Bhrigu, testing the god's patience, kicked the sleeping Vishnu in the chest, a daring act requiring either madness or absolute confidence in his status. Into the family of such a formidable figure came a son. According to the Mahabharata, his mother was the devoted and virtuous Puloma. Other versions mention Urjasvati. The child was named Ushanosh. Remember this name, Ushanosh, for it was his name at the beginning of his journey and appears in the oldest layers of Vedic texts. From birth, the child was not ordinary. The stories do not describe tender scenes with toys, but emphasize his tejas, an inner fire and spiritual brilliance. The boy literally shone, but it was not a warm, gentle light. Rather, it was a cold, piercing glow like a star on a frosty night. He grew at an alarming rate, not just physically, but intellectually. Knowledge seemed to rise within him as if he had known it for thousands of lifetimes. Soon, he earned a nickname that became his primary name, Shukla. Let's explore the meaning behind this resonant word. The Sanskrit root shuk means to be bright, shine, or sparkle. Shukra can be translated as clear, pure, or white. But the word also carries a more earthly, biological meaning, seed, the life-giving essence. This duality would follow our hero throughout his endless life. On one side, sterile purity, the white colour of Brahmanical righteousness, the light of knowledge dispelling the darkness of ignorance. On the other, a direct connection to fertility, the origin of life, passion, and thus the world of desires. Venus, in astrology, governs precisely these domains. Our hero, even as the child Ushanosh, carried this charge within him. He was a cold intellectual holding the keys to the hottest life force. Life under the stern hand of his father, the austere Bhrigu, left its mark. Imagine an environment where discipline is not just routine, but a way of being. Young Shukracharya absorbed the Vedas, mantras, and ritual instructions faster than his teachers could speak. Here, we arrive at the first, barely visible cracks in his fate. Genius often means isolation. Peers, other sons of rishis, likely kept their distance. It's hard to befriend someone who sees through you and corrects your mistakes in sacred hymns before you even make them. He grew serious, focused, and probably very lonely. He knew he belonged to the elite of the Bhrigu lineage, the white bone among Brahmins. They are the keepers of fire, those who can even argue with gods. This sense of exclusivity, combined with phenomenal talent, shaped young Shukra's unique character. He did not seek approval, but perfection. He did not want handouts. He wanted recognition earned through merit. He was the ideal student, ascetic, attentive, sharp-tongued. It seemed the doors of heavenly palaces would open for such a young man. The gods should have lined up to claim such an advisor. But fate, or karma, had other plans. Excessive brilliance often blinds those around it, causing irritation rather than admiration. Ushanosh, the white, shining sage, bearer of flawless purity, was too good for this imperfect world from the start. His uncompromising nature, inherited from his father, became a blade on which many inhabitants of the three worlds would eventually cut themselves. Scholars often note that Shukracharya embodies knowledge without sentimentality. Unlike other gurus who might show softness or fatherly leniency, Ushanosh saw the world from childhood as a complex problem, an equation to be solved. If harsh methods were needed to solve it, so be it. Truth does not have to be pleasant. In this child, sitting cross-legged in the forest and murmuring complex hymns, the great rebel already slumbered. Not one who shouts and waves fists in frustration, but one capable of overturning the cosmos simply because he saw the old order was flawed. Leaving his father's home, young Shukracharya, as befits a Brahmin seeking supreme knowledge, set out to find a teacher. Even if born a genius and already hearing hymns unknown to the rest of humanity, tradition is strict. You need a guru. Without a teacher, knowledge is considered illegitimate, rootless, and powerless. Shukra chose the sage Angiras, a logical but, as it turned out later, fateful decision. Angiras was a monumental figure, equal in status to Shukra's father. His ashram was renowned across the three worlds as a center of intellectual elite. It seemed the best place to sharpen the mind. Shukra, full of hope and that same cold determination we mentioned earlier, entered the forest school, ready to serve his teacher faithfully. He took a vow of obedience, carried wood for the sacred fire, kept the altar clean, and performed the darkest chores, waiting for the master to begin imparting the secret truths of existence. However, there was another student in Angiras's ashram, Brihaspati. Competition among sages was normal, but there was one small detail. Brihaspati was the teacher's own son. According to the Mahabharata and Bhagavat Purana, this is where a drama unfolded that shaped the fate of our solar system. Despite his greatness and asceticism, Angiras could not overcome the simple bond of fatherly affection. Shukracharya quickly noticed a strange pattern. While he diligently studied texts and polished ritual vessels, Brihaspati disappeared with his father into secluded huts. The situation was, to put it mildly, ambiguous. Shukra outperformed the teacher's son in discipline. He observed celibacy with fanatical rigor. His mind was sharper and memory deeper. But when it came to awarding honors, rare mantras and secret keys, Angiras consistently favored his own child. Shukra observed how Brihaspati grew stronger and more powerful, gaining knowledge not through merit, but by the right of bloodline. Let's delve into the psychology of this moment. Shukracharya, the future lord of the planet Venus, faced nepotism in its most unappealing form. For someone who lived by the idea of dharma, the universal law and justice, this was a shock. He realized that even among the greatest saints, even at an almost divine level, personal connections could outweigh talent and hard work. The texts say Shukra did not immediately confront the issue. He endured for a long time, hoping that Angiras would recognize his devotion. But with each passing year, the gap only widened. Brihaspati was being groomed as the guru of the gods, the devas. His brilliance was artificially inflated with knowledge hidden from Shukra. Meanwhile, Shukra remained in the background, forever the second choice, talented but an outsider. This injustice burned away all warmth and naivety from Shukra's heart. The emerging rivalry between Shukra and Brihaspati is more than just a mythological story. It is a prototype for all future conflicts between aristocracy, who receive everything by birthright, and self-made geniuses who have to fight for their place in the sun. In astrology, Jupiter, representing Brihaspati, and Venus, representing Shukra, are still considered adversaries. Jupiter symbolizes tradition, religion, and establishment. Venus stands for passion, magic, individualism, and rebellion. The roots of this opposition lie here, in the forest ashram, where one student received everything, while the other was left with scraps from the table of wisdom. The moment of truth came when Shukracharya directly confronted his teacher. Ancient chronicles do not record the exact dialogue, but the essence is clear. Shukra asked why Angiras was hiding higher knowledge accessible to Brihaspati. The teacher's response, or more likely his eloquent silence, was the last straw. Angiras essentially said, "You are talented, but he is my son." Shukracharya did not throw a tantrum or beg for mercy. He simply stood up and left. But he left not with his head bowed, but with a cold fire burning inside. He vowed to find a way to surpass Brihaspati. If the gods and their teachers played unfairly, if the celestial hierarchy was built on family ties rather than strength of spirit, then Shukra would create his own hierarchy. By leaving Angiras's ashram, Shukracharya essentially declared war on the entire divine order. He saw that the system was rotten, and if the Devas chose the convenient Brihaspati as their mentor, then he, Shukra, would turn to those whom everyone despised, those without protectors, the Asuras. It's important to note a subtle point here. Shukracharya did not become evil in the usual sense. He did not want to destroy the world for pleasure. He wanted to restore balance. His logic was this: if one side of the scales tips only due to privilege, then something equally heavy and powerful must be placed on the other side to restore equilibrium. And that something would be his own intellect. Thus, rejected by the best university in the universe, Shukra went into exile, carrying his grievance with him. He did not yet know exactly how he would defeat Brihaspati, but he was certain he would make Angiras regret his choice. According to the Mahabharata, his first refuge was the ashram of the sage Gautama, where he spent some time gathering his thoughts. But he did not intend to stay there long. A plan had already formed in his mind, cold and mathematically precise, like the movement of the planets. Let's look at the situation through our hero's eyes. His rival, Brihaspati, had not just gained knowledge, but a position. He became the Rajaguru, the spiritual advisor to the Devas, the gods inhabiting the heavenly realm of Svarga. This meant Brihaspati had access to unlimited resources, reverence, and most importantly, the Amrita, the nectar of immortality. He was integrated into the system, part of the establishment. Shukracharya understood perfectly well that to prove his superiority, he needed his own army and his own kingdom. He needed disciples to mould into a force capable of defeating Indra and shaming Brihaspati. But where could he find them? All respectable places were already taken. The righteous and wise gravitated toward the gods. There was only one option left: to look where no pure Brahmin dared to look, toward the Asuras. In texts like the Matsya Purana, the state of the Asuras at that time is described as quite dismal. They were not the mighty rulers we are familiar with from later myths. They were essentially the neglected outcasts of the universe. Like the gods, they were descendants of the progenitor Kashyapa, making them cousins to the gods, but they were chronically unlucky. Deprived of wise leadership, they constantly lost battles, were pushed into the underworld, and had their wealth and territories taken away. They were physically strong and full of rage, but utterly disorganized. They lacked strategy, discipline, and higher mystical knowledge. For Shukra, this was perfect material, clay from which anything could be shaped. There was also a psychological aspect. By becoming the teacher of the outcasts, he himself became the absolute authority. The Asuras had no choice but to listen to him attentively. No one there would remind him he was merely the son of Brigu, not the favourite of the chief priest. Shukra's arrival among the Asuras marked a turning point in cosmology. Imagine a solitary ascetic glowing with white light. Remember the meaning of his name. Descending into the dark worlds of Patala. He carried no weapons, only a staff and a water vessel. The Asuras, accustomed to seeing Brahmins as enemies, surrounded him warily. But Shukra did not curse them. Instead, he made them an offer they could not refuse. "I will make you stronger than the gods," he said, "if you place yourselves under my guidance and follow the Dharma I establish." It was a brilliant move. Shukracharya did not intend to become a demon himself. He planned to make the demons more like gods, disciplined, knowledgeable in rituals, skilled in astrology and mantras. He became what we might call today a crisis manager for a losing nation. At that moment, he received the title Asuracharya, the teacher of the Asuras. There is deep irony here. The purest, most ascetic Brahmin became the leader of the forces of chaos. But if you look closely, chaos ceased to be chaos with his arrival. Shukra introduced strict discipline among the demons. He forbade senseless violence and taught them to conserve energy through austerity rather than waste it on pointless destruction. Consequently, the balance of power in the universe began to shift rapidly. Where once Indra and Brihaspati could lazily sip Soma, confident that the Asuras' attacks would fail due to their own foolishness, now things became serious. The enemy had a mind, and that mind knew all the weaknesses of the celestial bureaucracy because it had grown up within its halls. This story illustrates an important philosophical principle: the necessity of opposition. The universe cannot exist in a unipolar state. If the gods had absolute power without resistance, they would sink into laziness and arrogance, which, incidentally, happened to them from time to time. By choosing the side of the so-called bad guys, Shukracharya actually created the necessary counterbalance that kept the gods alert. He became the pike in the river, so the carp would not sleep. But there was one problem. Despite all Shukra's organizational talents, the Asuras remained mortal. In open battle, when divine weapons were used, they died by the thousands. The gods, having tasted Amrita, simply recovered from their wounds. The mathematics of war were not in Shukra's favour. He saw his disciples, into whom he had poured so much effort, vanish from the face of the earth, turning to dust. His ambitions demanded more. Teaching them to fight was not enough. He needed to equalize the chances of survival and death. Brihaspati could revive fallen gods with healing herbs and Amrita. Shukra understood that to defeat his rival, he would have to find a way to bring back those who had crossed the threshold of death. This realization led him to the next step, one that demanded courage bordering on madness. His knowledge was vast, but still insufficient. There existed one force in the universe that stood above life and death, above gods and demons. That force was Mahadev, Shiva. Leaving his followers with clear instructions to remain quiet and out of sight, he set off again. This time, his destination was Kailash. He walked not as a supplicant, but as a warrior of the spirit, ready to pay any price for a weapon capable of rewriting the laws of nature. According to ancient texts, the meeting between Shukra and Shiva was far from a warm reunion. Shiva, the lord of yogis, fully understood why the son of Brigu had come. Shukra's request was bold. He sought the Mrityu Sanjivani Vidya, a mantra capable of restoring life to those who had lost it. Until then, no one, even the supreme gods, possessed such power. Shiva, seeing the determination in the petitioner, neither refused nor agreed outright. Instead, he set a condition so daunting that any rational being would lose the desire to argue with the heavens. Shukra was to spend 1,000 years hanging upside down over a fire, fed only with dry husks and straw. Most importantly, he was to sustain himself solely on the smoke from that fire. Imagining this is enough to make one feel faint, but in yogic tradition, this practice is called thumapana, drinking smoke. It is one of the harshest forms of austerity. Consider the physiology. Blood constantly rushes to the head, the body loses spatial orientation, and the lungs fill not with fresh mountain air, but with choking, acrid smoke. This is no fragrant temple incense. It is the bitter stench of smouldering decay. Yet, our hero agreed. He hung from a tree branch, some sources say a banyan tree, and began his 1,000-year marathon. Here lies an interesting detail worth mentioning. In astrology, the planet Venus, known as Shukra, governs comfort, luxury, soft cushions, sweet foods, and sensual pleasures. And yet, the Lord of Indulgence voluntarily subjected himself to the greatest discomfort. Why? Because the true nature of Venus is passion, and passion always demands a willingness to sacrifice everything for the object of desire. In this case, Shukra's object was neither a woman nor wealth, but victory over Bhrigu's disciple. His motivation was so strong that physical suffering became mere fuel. He hung in the bat-like posture, inhaling the grey smoke, burning away the last remnants of human frailty with every breath. Meanwhile, in the heavens, in the realm of Svarga, the king of gods, Indra, grew anxious. His throne had a peculiar trait. It began to heat up whenever someone performed an exceptionally powerful austerity. The heat of Shukra's tapas reached the heavens. Indra, ever fearful of losing his power, realized that if this fanatical Brahmin succeeded, the Asuras would become invincible. Following his usual tactics, Indra chose not to confront him openly, but to act cunningly. He sent his daughter, the beautiful Jayanti, sometimes described as an Apsara, to Shukra's place of penance. Her task was simple: to break his concentration, unsettle his resolve, and lure him away from his path into earthly or celestial pleasures. Jayanti arrived at Kailash and employed every method she knew. She stoked the fire to thicken the smoke, making it unbearable, or tried to soothe the ascetic with song. According to some legends, she even applied a paste of pepper to his eyelids to cause discomfort and disrupt his trance. But the knife of the teacher remained still. His consciousness was so deeply absorbed in the mantra directed at Shiva that he ceased to perceive external distractions. The smoke became nectar, pain turned to joy, and time lost its linear meaning. In this episode, we witness a transformation of character. The hurt youth who left Angiras disappeared. From smoke and fire emerged a great mystic. Shukra proved that his intellect could control even the instinct of self-preservation. He did not merely endure, he mastered his suffering. Thousands of years passed like a single day in Brahma's time. Shukra's body withered, but his inner fire, his tejas, burned brighter than the sun. Shiva, observing this feat, was impressed. Few among the gods could match such concentration of will. Shukra's austerity was complete. He endured the trial of smoke, an inverted world, and solitude. Jayanti, witnessing such steadfastness, changed her approach. Instead of causing harm, she humbly served him, fanning him and driving away insects. She realized she faced not just an enemy of the gods, but a being of the highest order. Shukracharya proved to the universe that he deserved the knowledge that would make him equal to the Creator himself. Finally, the long-awaited moment arrived. Shukracharya received what he had hung upside down for an entire epoch to obtain, the Mrityu Sanjivani Vidya, the secret knowledge of resurrection. This mantra held colossal power, the ability to call the jiva, the soul, back into the body, even if it had been grievously harmed in battle. From that moment, the son of Bhrigu became a unique figure in the cosmos. Neither Brahma, Vishnu, nor even his rival Bhrigu's disciple possessed this technique in such perfection. However, before returning to his Asura followers, Shukra had to settle matters of the heart. We remember Indra's daughter Jayanti, who, instead of leading the ascetic astray, chose to serve him loyally. Shukra, appreciating her devotion, and perhaps amused by the irony of the situation, accepted her proposal of marriage. This union, lasting 10 years according to the ancient texts, blessed them with a daughter named Devayani. Remember this name, Devayani. This girl, born of the union between the greatest ascetic and a celestial princess, would play her own role in the unfolding drama. Her character would be as complex and demanding as her father's. Finally returning to the Asura camp, Shukracharya was hailed as a deity, and rightly so. The balance of power in the eternal war shifted instantly and dramatically. Imagine the gods' disappointment. They marched into battle, their weapons blessed by Vishnu himself striking down enemies. Demons fell lifeless, but the moment Shukra uttered the mantra and sprinkled water over the bodies, they rose again, full of strength and fury. The war lost its meaning for the gods, becoming an endless cycle of slaughter where only they suffered losses. Panic erupted in the celestial city of Amaravati. Indra, king of the gods, tore at metal in frustration, while his advisor Bhrigu's disciple paced the palace like a storm cloud. They realized brute force and even divine weapons could not solve the problem. As long as Shukra lived and wielded the mantra, the Asuras were immortal. Killing Shukra himself was impossible. He was protected by the power of his austerity and Shiva's blessing. Only one path remained, diplomacy bordering on cunning, the path of espionage. The gods convened an emergency council. They needed someone who could infiltrate the enemy camp, gain Shukra's trust, and steal the secret of resurrection. But who would dare enter the demon's lair? Who possessed enough intellect to memorize the complex Vidya and enough charm to melt Shukra's icy heart? The choice fell on Brigu's disciple's own son, the young and handsome Kacha. It was a truly Machiavellian move, sending the son of the chief enemy to the enemy himself. The calculation was subtle. Shukra was a Brahmin through and through. He followed a code of honor. If a worthy student humbly requested knowledge, the guru could not refuse, even if that student was the son of his fiercest rival. This was the teacher's dharma. Blessed by his father and sent off with Indra's encouragement, return with the secret and you will share in our glory. Kacha set out for the Asura's abode. He carried no weapons. His arms were humility, eloquence, and youth. Upon meeting Shukra, Kacha fell at his feet and delivered a speech worthy of the finest diplomats. He did not hide his origins. "I am Kacha, grandson of Angiras and son of Brigu," he said. "I have come to you, greatest of scholars, to serve you for 1,000 years. Accept me as your student." Here we witness a remarkable moment of psychological confrontation. Shukracharya fully understood who stood before him. He was no fool. In this young man, he saw the traits of his enemy, none other than Brihaspati himself. It would have seemed the perfect opportunity for revenge, to drive the boy away, or even end his life. But Shukra acted differently. He accepted Kacha. Why? Scholars have debated this for centuries. Perhaps it was pride. "Look, Brihaspati, your son has come to learn from me, acknowledging my superiority." Or maybe it was the high Brahmanical ethic that values the transmission of knowledge above personal enmity. Seeing in Kacha a sincere thirst for knowledge, even if with hidden motives, Shukra could not refuse. He allowed the Trojan horse into his chambers. Kacha began his service. He was perfect. He tended the cows, gathered firewood, played musical instruments to entertain his teacher during rest. He never revealed his true identity, neither by word nor glance. But most importantly, he found the key to Shukra's most vulnerable defense, his daughter, the young Divyani. Among the rough and fearsome Asuras, Divyani had never encountered such a refined youth. Naturally, she fell in love, and Kacha, being a clever agent, did not reject her affection, but neither did he fully commit, keeping her in a sweet tension that made her lose her senses. Years passed this way. The enemy lived in the teacher's house, becoming almost a family member, winning the daughter's heart and the father's trust. Yet the Asuras were not as noble or trusting as their guru. They eyed Brihaspati's son with suspicion. They sensed deep down that this young man was not here by chance. The demons understood what Shukra refused to see in his generosity. If Kacha learned the secret of immortality and returned to the gods, all their advantage would vanish. The tension within the clan grew. The Asuras decided to act behind their teacher's back. They were not bound by the Brahmin code of honor. For them, the question was simple. Is there a threat? It must be eliminated. While Shukra meditated and Divyani dreamed of marriage, a conspiracy took shape in the dark forests around the ashram. The first move came when Kacha led the herd deep into the forest. According to the ancient texts, there were no lengthy negotiations. The Asuras surrounded Brihaspati's son and, let's say, ended his life. To cover their tracks, they cut the body into pieces and fed them to wolves and jackals. The calculation was simple. No body, no problem. If the student simply disappeared, it could be blamed on an accident or wild animals. In the evening, the cows returned to the pen alone. Divyani, who already felt more than friendly affection for Kacha, immediately sensed something was wrong. She ran to her father in tears. Her argument was ironclad and purely feminine. The cows came back, but Kacha did not. Either he was dead or lost. But know this, Father, I cannot live without him. Shukracharya found himself in a difficult position. On one hand, the student was missing. On the other, his beloved daughter issued an ultimatum. The great guru did not conduct investigations or question the asuras. Instead, he applied the very knowledge he had pursued for 1,000 years. Shukra used the Mrita Sanjivani mantra. Mentally, he called Kacha. The power of this mantra is such that the soul must return to the body, wherever it may be. To the horror of the hiding asuras, Kacha emerged from the forest intact and unharmed. The wolves that had torn him apart simply burst, unable to withstand the power of revival. Or perhaps the body reassembled itself. The texts offer different interpretations, but the result was the same. The spy returned to duty. Kacha, being a clever agent, did not complain to his teacher about his attendance. He understood he was on enemy territory, and any complaint would only worsen his position. He continued to smile and serve, pretending nothing unusual had happened. The asuras were furious. Their plan had failed, but they were not ready to give up. They realized that simply destroying the physical body was not enough, as long as Shukra possessed his magical formula. The second time, they ambushed Kacha when he went to the ocean to collect rare flowers requested by Divyani. This time, the demons approached the matter creatively. They did not just take his life. They reduced his body to powder, dissolved it into the salty ocean water. Their logic was flawless. A body dissolved in the ocean cannot be reassembled. But again, they underestimated Shukracharya's power. When Divyani threw another tantrum that evening, which was becoming a habit, Shukra repeated the mantra, and the ocean obediently returned Kacha. The youth appeared before the teacher again, wet but alive. At this point, it's worth pausing to ask, did Shukracharya, a man of the highest intellect, not understand what was happening? Did he truly believe Kacha was just unlucky and constantly getting into trouble? Most likely, Shukra knew perfectly well, but his pride played a cruel trick on him. Each time he brought Kacha back to life, he demonstrated his omnipotence to the asuras and the entire universe. Look, he seemed to say, you may destroy matter, but I rule over life itself. This display of power clouded his vigilance. Seeing their teacher playing God and ignoring clan safety, the asuras decided to take extreme measures. The third attempt was meant to be final. They realized that to prevent Shukra from resurrecting Kacha, they had to make the student's body part of something Shukra would not dare or be able to destroy. The third time, they attacked Kacha when he was alone. They ended his life again, but this time they burned the body to ashes. Then came the most sinister cunning only demonic minds could devise. They mixed the ashes with wine. It's important to clarify that in those times, even the strictest Brahmins occasionally consumed sura, a fermented drink. It was not forbidden for Shukra. The asuras offered the cup of this special wine to their teacher after a long day of meditation. Unaware of the trap, Shukracharya accepted the offering and drank it to the last drop. At that moment, the trap snapped shut. What remained of Kacha's material essence now lay inside Shukracharya himself, in his stomach. That evening, the scenario repeated. The cows came back, but Kacha did not. Divyani, now accustomed to her father solving all problems related to her beloved, demanded his return once again. Shukra likely sighed with some weariness. "Very well," he said. "I will call him now." He closed his eyes, focused, and chanted the summoning mantra. Then something happened that even he could not have foreseen. Kacha's voice responded, not from the forest, not from the ocean shore, nor from the heavens. The voice came muffled, but clearly from inside Shukra himself. "Teacher, I am here," said the voice from within. "I am inside you." Shukracharya froze. For the first time in 1,000 years, the great sage found himself at a loss. He was struck by the realization of the monstrous situation. He carried within himself the son of his enemy, the student he had so carefully protected. Now he faced a dilemma with no good solution. If he summoned Kacha out, the student would have to tear through the teacher's body to escape. That would mean the end for Shukra. If he left Kacha inside, the youth would be digested and disappear forever, which for a Brahmin was tantamount to committing a grave sin. the killing of a Brahmin, a Brahmatya, and a trusted disciple. The Asuras had outplayed their guru. They had checkmated him. Either he would die himself or become a killer who violated the sacred laws of hospitality. Kacha's voice from within was calm and respectful, adding a surreal quality to the moment. Brekaspati's son did not shout or panic. He simply stated the fact. "Teacher, by the will of your attendants, I am now part of you. They mixed my ashes with wine, and unknowingly, you have become my prison." Shukracharya was furious, but it was the cold fury of an intellectual who had made a grave mistake. He realized that the demons had not only killed his student, but had exploited the one weakness of their teacher, his fondness for intoxicating drinks. The demons knew that in a state of mild inebriation, the vigilance of a great yogi would dull. They played on this fact perfectly. Now, Shukracharya, who had always prided himself on his insight, felt betrayed twice over. By his students, by the demons, and by his own habit. At that moment, Devayani rushed into the hut. She didn't know all the details of what had happened, but her intuition told her it was serious. Seeing her father sitting with a stone expression, clutching his stomach, and hearing a muffled voice coming from an unclear place, she was likely shocked. But Devayani was her father's daughter, decisive and demanding. "Father," she said, steel ringing in her voice, "I don't care how this happened. I need you both. Without Kacha, my life has no meaning, and without you, I will be an orphan. Do something. You are the great Shukracharya." That plea became a verdict for the wise man. He found himself trapped in a logical dilemma he had helped create. Let's examine this dilemma, for it is tragic in its complexity. If Shukracharya allowed Kacha to emerge, his student would have to, quite literally, carve his way out through the teacher's body. Since Kacha needed to be restored to flesh, this would tear Shukra apart. The teacher would die. But if Shukracharya chose to preserve his own life and kept Kacha inside, the student would be digested and vanish into oblivion. The choice seemed clear: self-preservation or sacrifice. But for a Brahmin of the highest order, as Shukra was, this was impossible. To allow the death of a student, especially a Brahmin under one's protection, was the gravest sin: Brahmahatya, the killing of a Brahmin. This was a crime against cosmic law that wiped away all accumulated merit and condemned the soul to the darkest realms for millions of years. Shukracharya could not act against his principles, yet he did not want to die. Sitting in the lotus position and feeling the weight in his stomach, he made a historic decision that evening. Looking at the empty wine cup, he cursed alcohol. According to the Mahabharata tradition, this was the moment the rule was born forbidding Brahmins from consuming intoxicating drinks. From now on, he proclaimed, his voice thunderous, any Brahmin who touches wine or any intoxicating potion will lose his caste, his dharma, and be considered equal to a murderer. For wine robbed me of my reason, clouded my vision, and allowed this tragedy to happen. This was both an act of repentance and legislation. Shukra acknowledged his mistake, but did so in a way that turned it into a lesson for all future generations of priests. He understood that clarity of mind was the greatest weapon of a sage, and voluntarily surrendering it for momentary pleasure was a grave negligence. But cursing the wine did not solve the immediate problem. Kacha was still inside, and Devayani was still waiting for a solution. Shukracharya turned to his inner passenger. "Son of Brihaspati, you have caused me great sorrow. Because of you, I must choose between my death and eternal disgrace. The demons, my students, hate you so much they seek to destroy me as well. But you are not to blame. Your devotion and humility deserve reward." Here we see the greatness of Shukra's spirit. He did not blame the young man, who was essentially a spy. He assessed the situation objectively. The demons had crossed a line. They had targeted the life of their guru for political gain. This betrayal freed Shukra from any moral obligation toward the demons at that moment. He began to consider if there was a way out of this situation, where the options seemed binary, life or death, and make the answer something else entirely. He needed a miracle. Kacha had to come out, killing the teacher. Then the teacher would have to be restored. But who would resurrect the teacher? The mantra of Mrita Sanjivani was known only to Shukra himself. If he passed away, the knowledge would die with him. Was the circle closed or not? In Shukra's mind, now clear after the effects of the wine, a bold and brilliant plan took shape, as daring as everything he ever did. A plan that required absolute trust in the student, the son of his enemy, the one who came to steal knowledge. Shukracharya looked at his belly and quietly said, "Listen carefully, Kacha. Now I will do what you came for. I will pass to you the Mrita Sanjivani Vidya. I will teach you to resurrect the dead right now while you are still inside me." This was checkmate to all intrigue. Shukra decided to make Kacha the bearer of knowledge so that when he emerged, having inadvertently killed the teacher, he could immediately use this knowledge to bring the teacher back to life. It was an enormous risk. What guarantee was there that Kacha, having received the sacred mantra and escaped, would not flee to his father Brihaspati, leaving Shukra torn apart on the ashram floor? There were no guarantees, only the word of a Brahmin and hope in the young man's nobility. Shukra slowly, syllable by syllable, chanted the Mrita Sanjivani mantra. The vibration of his voice penetrated deep within, resonating with every cell of his body and reaching Kacha's consciousness. The son of Brihaspati, imprisoned in this unnatural cell, absorbed the knowledge with the desperation of a drowning man grasping at a lifeline. He understood there would be no second chance. A mistake in a single letter or tone would cost both their lives. This was a unique test. Usually, a guru imparts knowledge to the student face to face, controlling the process. Here, everything relied on blind trust. Shukracharya entrusted everything, hoping the young man's honour would outweigh the enmity between their clans. When the last syllable of the mantra faded in the hut, a pause fell. Teacher and student mentally said their farewells. "Now you know all I know," Shukra said. "Come out of Imbrihaspati, fulfill your duty." What happened next is described briefly in the texts, but the imagination fills in the picture. For Kacha to emerge, he had to tear through the teacher's flesh. The great Asura Gugu, lord of the planet Venus, collapsed to the hut floor. His body was torn and life left him. Devayani, watching this, cried out but quickly covered her mouth. Before her stood Kacha, alive, radiant like a young crescent moon, but covered in her father's blood. It seemed like a moment of triumph for the gods. The spy within, the secret learned. The most dangerous enemy of Indra lay lifeless. Kacha could have simply turned and left, abandoning the Asuras without a leader. The demons likely wouldn't have caught him, stunned by their mentor's death. But Kacha did not move. He remembered Dharma, his sacred duty. He looked at the body of the one who had given him a second life and folded his hands in prayer. Now he was the guru. He had become the bearer of Vidya. The first to test his power on was its creator himself. Kacha closed his eyes and began chanting the very mantra he had learned minutes before. The space around filled with a hum. The energy summoned by the ancient words began to gather matter together. Shukra's wounds closed, bones knit, and in his dimmed eyes, the cold, piercing light of intellect returned. Shukracharya took a deep breath and rose. He was alive. He looked at Kacha, and in that gaze, there was no anger or suspicion. It was a look of equals. The plan had worked perfectly. The demons who had orchestrated this scheme with wine suffered a crushing defeat. They not only failed to destroy the spy, but made him immortal and forced their teacher to undergo the humiliating process of resurrection at the hands of his enemy. Here, the relationship between the characters shifts in a way many overlook. In Indian tradition, there is the concept of Dvija, the twice-born. Usually this refers to Brahmins who have undergone initiation, but for Kacha and Shukra, it took on a literal physiological meaning. Shukracharya, addressing the young man, spoke words that would forever change their fate. "You have fulfilled your destiny," he said softly. "Now you are no longer just a student. You are the bearer of Mrita Sanjivani. You have emerged from me, which means we share the same blood. Go now to your celestial kin. I do not hold you back." Kacha, folding his hands in a respectful bow, touched the feet of his teacher. Words were unnecessary between them. They both understood that the world had changed forever. The monopoly on immortality, once so proudly held by the Asuras, had collapsed. The secret had been passed on. The young man turned and left the demon's abode without looking back, carrying in his memory the sacred syllables capable of outwitting death. Shukra remained alone. He approached the hut's entrance and gazed up at the night sky, where countless stars shimmered. He realized the earthly chess game they had played for millennia had reached a dead end. Now both sides had equal pieces. This meant the old sage would have to seek new, far more intricate strategies than simple magic of revival. His role as a mentor was entering a new phase. Kacha's return to the heavenly city of Amaravati became a celebration among the gods, comparable only to the acquisition of the nectar of immortality. Indra, king of the gods, could finally breathe a sigh of relief. The balance of power, long disrupted by Shukracharya's genius, was restored. Now, if a god fell in battle, Kacha, or those trained by him, could bring them back. If a demon fell, Shukra did the same. The situation was, frankly, a stalemate. What was once a war with a clear goal, the destruction of the enemy, had turned into a meaningless cycle. Imagine a battle where losses are instantly restored. This was no longer war, but an endless sparring match, a universal-scale training exercise where no one could claim a final victory. Sitting in his forest ashram, Shukracharya was fully aware of this irony. He, more than anyone, saw the absurdity of the situation. Raw force had ceased to be the decisive argument. This revealed the true nature of our hero, making him not just a sorcerer, but the greatest strategist of the cosmos. Let's explore why, in Vedic astrology, the planet Venus, also known as Shukra, governs not only love and pleasure, but also diplomacy, politics, and ministers. At first glance, love and cold politics seem unrelated, but the connection is direct. When you cannot destroy your enemy, you must negotiate with them. You have to seek compromises, weave intrigues, form alliances, and use charm instead of a club. Shukra understood that the era of direct confrontations was over. The time had come for intelligence and soft power. He began teaching his rough and straightforward Asura disciples an art that was entirely foreign to them, the art of living alongside the enemy without killing them, but also without yielding to them. During this period, Shukracharya transformed from a field medic into a seasoned politician. He started developing codes of conduct known as Shukraniti, treatises on how to govern a state, conduct negotiations, and exploit the weaknesses of opponents. He taught the demons that victory was not a mountain of corpses, but a favourable peace treaty. For us, this stage in Shukra's life reveals a crucial aspect. Venus's influence on a person is often reduced to simple likes and dislikes, but the highest expression of this planet is the ability to find harmony in contradictions. Shukra teaches that if you face a problem or person you cannot defeat, fire, out-argue, or remove from your life, then you need to change tactics and embrace diplomacy. Look at your own life. How often do we bang our heads against a wall, trying to force our point when the forces are equal? In such cases, Shukra simply steps aside and offers a deal. That's why people with a strong Venus in their charts often become brilliant negotiators, lawyers, or consultants. They do not fear conflict, they know how to turn it into cooperation. Returning to our hero, realizing the new situation, Shukra decided that since the gods had become immortal in a tactical sense, the Asuras needed to become better than the gods. This sounds paradoxical. Demons, naturally drawn to chaos and darkness, under Shukra's guidance began mastering the most complex Vedic rituals. The teacher reasoned, power in the universe is granted not for beauty or birthright, but for adherence to Dharma, the law. If Indra and his retinue began breaking the law, intoxicated by their impunity, while the Asuras strictly observed their vows and performed sacrifices, the universal energy would naturally flow to the demons. This was a brilliant long-term strategy. Shukra placed his bet on moral superiority. He forbade the Asuras from senseless cruelty. He introduced a strict hierarchy and reverence for the Brahmins within their society. The demons gritted their teeth. They wanted to smash and destroy, but they obeyed their guru. Consequently, the war shifted from the physical plane to the ethical one, and here the gods began to lose. Relaxed in their heavenly comfort, they started forgetting their duties, while the Asuras, hungry for victory, were more disciplined than ever. Shukracharya proved that the right system beats any talent or inherited privilege. Here lies another lesson of Venus for us. This planet loves comfort, but also demands structure. Luxuries and wealth governed by Shukra come not to those who lie on the couch dreaming, but to those who know how to build relationships with the world according to certain rules. Shukra showed that even chaos can be transformed into a thriving empire if approached with intelligence and willpower. So, we have reached the moment when our hero Shukracharya finally changed his tactics. Understanding that a head-on clash with the heavens was impossible to win, he decided to play the long game. He needed the perfect instrument, a ruler who would obey him unconditionally and implement his revolutionary new doctrine. That instrument was King Mahabali. We have already discussed this ruler's personality and how he dramatically lost his kingdom in another lecture. Today, we will not retell those events, but look at this era through the eyes of our hero Shukracharya, the architect of this triumph. Shukra looked at the young Mahabali and saw potential absent in other Asuras. He combined the natural strength of Titans with the ability to learn. Shukra's plan was bold. He intended to prove to the universe that righteousness was not the monopoly of the gods. He told Mahabali, "We will stop acting like destroyers. We will become holier, purer, and more generous than the inhabitants of the heavens. We will flood this world with so many virtuous rituals that the laws of karma will have no choice but to grant us power." And the work began. Under Shukracharya's careful guidance, the Asura kingdom transformed beyond recognition. It was a unique social experiment. Imagine demons, beings of chaos, suddenly rising before dawn, performing ablutions and reciting the Vedas for hours. Shukra personally oversaw every yagna, the fire sacrifice. He imposed the strictest discipline: no alcohol, no violence for amusement. Remember his vow? Meanwhile, in the heavenly realm of Amaravati, the gods relaxed. Indra and his retinue, accustomed to considering themselves good by birthright, enjoyed the dances of the Apsaras, drank soma, and likely began neglecting their duties. Meanwhile, in the underworld, the Asuras clenched their teeth and accumulated tapas, the fiery energy of austerity. The climax of this strategy was the great Vishwajit Yajna, where Shukracharya served as the chief priest. He knew exactly what he was doing. When Mahabali, shining in new armour forged in sacred fire, led his army toward the heavens, it was not a barbaric raid. It was a march of those who held moral authority to power. Brihaspati, mentor of the gods and eternal rival of Shukra, saw the aura of the advancing demons and immediately understood. He told Indra, "We cannot win. Now Dharma is on their side. Shukracharya has created a system against which we have no weapon. We will have to retreat." And so the gods withdrew without a fight. This was the greatest victory of Shukracharya. He did not defeat Brihaspati with a sword, but with a book of rules. He proved that intelligence and discipline matter more than origin. Mahabali took Indra's throne, ushering in what became known as the Golden Age. It is important here to analyse how the energy of Venus, or Shukra, manifested during this reign. In Jyotish astrology, Venus governs material prosperity, luxury, and comfort. But Shukracharya revealed a higher octave of this planet: resource management. Demons are often associated with greed, wanting to seize everything. Shukra taught Bali a different principle. To maintain power, one must give. Bali became famous for his incredible generosity. In his kingdom, there were no hungry or poor. Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, came to the demons not because she was forced, but because there was order. Shukracharya, like a grey eminence, stood behind the throne, maintaining balance. He understood the psychology of success better than anyone else. Want to live like a king? Behave like a king. Follow rituals, be generous, and do not break the laws of the universe. He created a state where demonic energy was directed not toward destruction, but creation. This was the peak of his career as a mentor. However, as a wise man, Shukra began to notice warning signs that others failed to see. His generosity was turning into pride. He reveled in his righteousness. __quote_4__. Shukracharya knew that pride, even when based on good deeds, is a crack in the armor. He saw that the balance was disturbed again. Now the scales were tipping toward the demons, and the cosmos does not tolerate extremes. Too much good from the wrong characters created tension in the fabric of existence. Our hero sensed that this perfect world, built by his own hands, was fragile. Somewhere in the higher realms, where Vishnu, the preserver of the world, dwells, the complaints of homeless gods were already being heard. Shukra understood that a heavenly response was inevitable, and it would not be directed at the demon army, but at Mahabali himself, at his greatest weakness, his ego. Shukracharya tried to warn his student. He told him that endless generosity is dangerous and that one must know limits. But Mahabali, blinded by his own radiance, had stopped hearing his teacher's warnings. This is the tragedy of any power. The student grows up and begins to think he is wiser than the mentor. When Mahabali announced the final 100th Ashvamedha Yagna, which was meant to secure his status as ruler of the universe forever, Shukra tensed. His intuition screamed danger. He knew the gods would not allow this to happen, and he was right. Naturally, the gods turned to Vishnu. This is their standard response in any unclear situation. Usually, Vishnu takes his mace, mounts his mount, and flies off to restore order. But this case was special. To use force against Bali would mean breaking Dharma. After all, the demon king had done nothing wrong. He was simply too good. So Vishnu resorted to a trick. He incarnated not as a fierce warrior or a lion man, but as a small, unassuming dwarf Brahmin named Vamana. At this time, Shukracharya was at the height of his power. He stood beside Mahabali on the banks of the sacred Narmada river, where the king was performing his 100th and final Ashvamedha. Successfully completing this ritual would have made the demons' rule over the universe eternal. The atmosphere was solemn. Thousands of priests, mountains of gold, endless lines of supplicants, each leaving with rich gifts. Then, through the crowd of courtiers and pushing past stern demon guards, a small Brahmin boy approached the sacrificial altar. In his hands was an umbrella made of palm leaves and a wooden staff, and on his face played a charming smile. From him radiated such a gentle, captivating light that even the stern Asura warriors involuntarily parted, touched by the child. Mahabali, seated on his golden throne, also smiled warmly. For him, the arrival of such a young and radiant guest was a sign of special blessing. The king descended from his throne to personally greet the little sage. He saw before him a simple boy in need of help. Shukracharya did not smile. In Vedic astrology, Jyotish, Venus is titled Kavi, the seer, the poet, one who sees to the root. Shukra, master of illusions, Maya, understood these illusions better than anyone. While everyone else saw a sweet child, Shukracharya scanned the guest with his inner vision. What he saw made the hair on his body stand on end. This was no boy. Within this tiny form pulsed energy so dense it could collapse a galaxy into a point. Shukra recognized an ancient, infinite being who changed avatars like gloves. He knew this was Vishnu, the same Vishnu who, in every age, found a way to outwit the Asuras. Shukracharya understood. This was the end. This was no courtesy visit. It was a special operation to change the regime. He leaned close to his student's ear, speaking quietly but firmly. "Mahabali," he hissed. "Give him nothing. Promise him not a single grain of rice." The king turned in surprise. His eyes, clouded by his own virtue, looked at his teacher in confusion. "What are you saying, Guru? This is just a child. Look at him. He'll probably ask for a little food or maybe a cow. I have plenty of those. I have no reason to refuse." "This is not a child." Shukra's voice hardened, steel ringing within it. "This is Vishnu himself. He did not come for food. He came to take everything from you. Your kingdom, your power, your glory. He uses your generosity as a trap. Send him away before he opens his mouth. Here we see a classic conflict between cold intuition and hot ego. Shukracharya was a pragmatist to the core. He knew the price of power. Bali was an idealist, intoxicated by his own righteousness. He believed that if he offered alms to God himself, his glory would outshine the stars. Mahabali looked at his teacher with a hint of superiority. You know that feeling when a student grows up and starts thinking he is wiser than his mentor? "Teacher," the king said loudly so the courtiers could hear, "you taught me that no dharma is higher than giving. If this dwarf is truly Lord Vishnu, then it is my greatest honor to gift him. How can I refuse the Creator? Even if he takes everything, my name will live on through the ages as the one who spared nothing for God." Shukracharya probably grasped his head in frustration at that moment. The irony was brutal. He had spent centuries turning demons into civilized rulers, and now their leader was ready to surrender the empire for a grand gesture. Bali did not understand a simple truth. When God comes to ask, he does not need material things. He comes to restore balance, that is, to take away the excess. "You are a fool," Shukra could no longer hold back. "Your virtue has become your downfall. You do not understand who you are dealing with. This is not charity. This is political suicide. I, your guru, forbid you to make this vow." But the mechanism of karma was already in motion. Vamana stepped closer. Mahabali, deliberately ignoring his teacher's tug on his sleeve, addressed the guest with a radiant face. "What do you desire, O Brahmin? Gold, villages, elephants? Ask for anything. The demon king is more generous today than ever." Vamana smiled, and in that smile lay the irony of the universe. "I do not need gold, king, nor elephants. I need only as much land as I can measure with 3 steps. Just 3 steps of land for meditation." The hall exhaled. The asuras exchanged glances and chuckled. 3 steps of a dwarf? Seriously? Let him take a whole stadium if he wants. But Shukracharya turned pale. As a great mystic and expert in symbolism, he instantly decoded the meaning. 3 steps were not a measure of length, but a metaphor for the 3 worlds. Buloka, the earth, Bhuvaloka, the atmosphere, and Swargaloka, the heavens. "Do not promise," Shukra almost shouted, forgetting etiquette. "This is a deception. He will grow and cover the entire cosmos. 3 steps, that is all we have." Mahabali merely waved him off. He was even a little embarrassed for his teacher. How could a great sage be so petty? To hesitate over 3 steps of land for a child? Bali declared solemnly, reaching for the golden vessel filled with water. According to Vedic tradition, the act of giving, or dana, is considered legally binding only when the giver pours water onto the hand of the recipient while stating the sankalpa, the intention. Until the water spills, the agreement can be revoked. As long as the hands remain dry, the empire belongs to the demons. Shukracharya stared at the golden pitcher as if it were a ticking time bomb. He understood that only a final moment remained. Words no longer worked. Authority held no sway. The student was blinded and deaf to reason. At that moment, Shukracharya made a decision that fully revealed his dedication to the cause. Even if the cause was lost, he would not step aside. He chose to intervene physically, breaking all rules of decorum and hierarchy. Using his mystical powers, the great guru shrank his body to the size of a tiny insect. As Bali lifted the heavy vessel, the small Shukra flew and dove straight into the spout of the pitcher. He pressed his back and legs against the narrow neck, blocking the flow of water. It was humiliating, sitting in darkness, inside a wet vessel, like some kind of stopper. But Shukra was ready to endure any indignity to prevent the water from spilling and the vow from taking effect. Mahabali tilted the vessel, but no water flowed. The king shook the pitcher, not a drop. Quote 6, he wondered aloud. Quote 7. Silence fell over the altar. Shukracharya, curled up inside the narrow spout, hoped the king would set the pitcher down, call his servants, and create a commotion, buying him time. But he had forgotten who stood before the king. Vamana, who had seen and understood everything, fixed a piercing gaze on the picture. He knew who was hiding there, and what to do. Bending to the ground, Vamana picked up a sharp blade of grass. The dwarf said gently. With a smile full of universal wisdom, Vamana slowly brought the sharp blade to the opening of the golden vessel. This grass, by the way, is not used casually in Vedic rituals. Its edges are as sharp as a razor blade. Shukracharya, curled in the darkness of the narrow neck, fully understood what would happen in the next fraction of a second. He had a choice. He could have disappeared, fled like a fly, saving his sight, but that would mean surrendering without a fight, allowing the water to spill immediately. Instead, he stayed. He faced the challenge head-on. The sharp blade entered the spout. Vamana's movement was smooth, confident and merciless. The tip found its mark. It pierced straight into the eye of the great guru. The pain must have been beyond measure, but Shukra did not utter a sound. He did not allow himself a cry that might have disturbed the sacred silence of the yajna. Yet, physiology took its course. Instinctively recoiling from the pain, Shukracharya shifted, freeing the passage, and water flowed. A thin stream, sparkling in the sunlight, fell onto the dwarf's palm. The vow was sealed. The mechanism of fate, which Shukra had tried to stop with his own body, worked. Mahabali, seeing the water finally flow, breathed a sigh of relief and joyfully completed the giving ritual. He spoke the final words of the Sankalpa, irrevocably transferring the rights to the 3 steps of land to this strange boy. At that moment, Shukracharya emerged from the picture, returning to his normal form. But he was no longer the radiant figure the demons were used to seeing. He stood holding his face, blood seeping through his fingers. One eye was lost forever. This scene is filled with profound drama. Imagine Bali's reaction. The king had just performed the greatest act of generosity in his life. He was proud of himself, expecting praise. Then he saw his teacher, injured and missing an eye. Slowly, the king realized the blockage in the picture was not dirt. It was his mentor sacrificing himself, trying to save a foolish student from ruin. Shukracharya, now one-eyed and known as Ikaksha, did not make a scene. He stood silently, his remaining eye looking at Vamana with a complex mix of respect and bitterness. He had lost the game, but paid a price few gods would accept for entry. Different interpretations explain this moment in various ways, each revealing a new facet of our hero's character. On one hand, it is a punishment for trying to obstruct divine will. Vishnu seems to say, quote, 10. On the other hand, scholars of Jyotish astrology see a reference to the nature of Venus. This planet governs attachments. Shukra was too attached to his student Mahabali and to his vision of an ideal demon kingdom. This attachment blinded him and made him resist the inevitable flow of time. To gain spiritual insight, he had to lose physical sight. Now he saw the world not in 2 eyes, not in duality, but as a whole. Returning to the events on the banks of the Narmada River, as soon as the water touched the boy's hand, the illusion of the small child shattered. The dwarf began to grow, not just grow, but expand cosmically. His feet remained on the ground, but his head stretched into infinity. The sun and moon became his eyes, clouds his hair, and stars his ornaments. This was the form of Vishvarupa, the cosmic universal form. Mahabali stood frozen in awe and terror. Now he understood the warning his teacher had given, but it was too late. Vamana took the first step, covering the entire earth. The second step crossed the heavens. All the lands, everything he had built under Shukra's guidance, vanished beneath the god's feet in an instant. Underscore underscore quote underscore 11 underscore underscore underscore. A voice thundered, shaking the mountains. Quote 12. Mahabali, stripped of everything but dignity, knelt. He had nothing left to offer but himself. Quote 13. The demon king said humbly. Vamana placed his foot on the king's head and pressed him down with immense force into Patala, the underworld, thus restoring balance to the universe. The gods received the heavens, humans the earth, and the demons returned to their original realms. It might seem Shukracharya's role ended here. His student defeated, his eye lost, his strategy failed. Anyone else would have packed up and fallen into deep despair. But Shukra acted differently. And this is perhaps the most important lesson of this story. When Vishnu, having returned to his calm form, asked Shukra, Shukracharya did not complain. He did not shout. Instead, overcoming his pain, he folded his hands respectfully and spoke words that entered the sacred texts. Quote 16. Consider the greatness of this moment. Shukracharya accepts defeat, but does so with such dignity that the defeat itself becomes a spiritual victory. He holds no grudge against Vishnu for the lost eye. He understands these were the rules of the game, and he chose to play. He defended his student to the last, sacrificing part of himself, but when the will of the Supreme manifested fully, he accepted it without protest. This quality distinguishes a true Brahmin from a mere sorcerer. Shukracharya showed that his knowledge of Dharma transcends personal grievances. However, the eye injury did not go unnoticed. Since then, in astrology, a damaged Venus is often linked with vision problems. But there is a hidden aspect as well. Losing one eye, Shukra stopped focusing on external appearances. His gaze turned inward. He became one who perceives hidden motives, the secrets of desire, and the unseen pitfalls in any agreement. This story teaches us an intriguing paradox. Sometimes, to see the truth, we must stop focusing on the attractive surface. Mahabali looked with both eyes and saw a charming boy. Shukra looked beyond the form and saw danger. Yes, he suffered for his insight, but is truth meant to be safe? Shukracharya remains known as the only guru who literally shielded a doorway with his own body to protect his disciple, fully aware that the disciple was mistaken. This is the highest form of teaching loyalty. You may disagree with your student, recognize their errors, but when trouble comes, you take the blow yourself. Now, as the smoke from the sacrificial fire cleared and Mahabali descended to rule the underworld, our hero faced a new phase in his endless existence. He had lost an eye and his best student. His political ambitions were crushed beneath a divine sandal. Yet it was at this moment of utter defeat that his transformation began. From a teacher of demons to a cosmic being whose radiance greets us every morning in the east. He had to learn how to live with this wound and turn his defeat into a source of light for the entire universe. After all, Venus is the brightest planet in our sky. According to ancient texts, Shukra retreated once more into a deep forest. But this time, his goal was neither weapons nor mantras. It was light. He began an ascetic practice so intense that even his previous feats, hanging in smoke, seemed like a warm-up. He stood motionless, absorbing the sun's rays and transforming them within his consciousness. Chronicles say he began to glow. At first it was a gentle shimmer, but over time it grew stronger. Eventually the intensity of the cold white light from the one-eyed sage rivaled Surya, the sun god himself. Imagine the scene. One light in the sky, another blazing in the jungle below. This caused quite a stir. The universe literally overheated from the ambition of one Brahmin. Then Brahma, the creator of the universe, together with Shiva, decided that such a powerful source of energy had no place on the mortal earth. He was told something like this: "Your light and wisdom are so vast that they cannot be contained within the human world. From now on, you will take your place among the stars. You will become a graha." It's important to clarify the term graha. Often translated as planet, its Sanskrit root means to grasp, hold, or seize. A graha is a celestial entity that captures our consciousness and holds us within the bounds of destiny. By becoming a graha, Shukra ceased to be just an individual. He became a cosmic function, the shining object we now call Venus. He was assigned an orbit, given a retinue, and granted immortal status. No Vamana could ever displace him again. But what exactly was his role? What responsibility did this newly appointed celestial minister carry? This raises a fair question. We know that factories, tides, and the sap in plants are governed by Chandra, the moon. Did Shukra take over his neighbour's job? Not at all. there is a subtle division of duties we need to understand. Chandra represents maternal moisture, pure water that nourishes, hydrates, and provides bulk. It's like the milk that feeds an infant so they can grow. But Shukra is not just water, he is the essence. In Ayurveda, there is the concept of Shukra Dhatu, the reproductive tissue or seed. It is the final product of metabolism, the most complex and precious substance in the body. If Chandra provides water to keep a plant green and juicy, Shukra ensures that the plant produces sweet nectar, blossoms, and bears seed. Shukra is the universe's potency. He transforms simple biological matter into new life. Without him, the world would be merely moist and green, but barren. That is why our hero became the guardian of Virya, the vital life force. He is a cosmic geneticist, responsible for the quality of the material passed from father to son, from flower to fruit. Once a teacher of demons, Shukra became the chief biologist of the cosmos. He also gained the authority to distribute rains, not just any rains, but those that bring wealth and bountiful harvests. In Vedic astrology, Venus's position often predicts agricultural success. When Venus is strong, granaries are full. When afflicted, moisture may come, but it will be ineffective. Crops will rot or fail to sprout. Interestingly, Shukra shines brighter than all other stars and planets, except the sun and moon. His light is white, pure, and piercing, just like his uncompromising and clear character. Even after losing one eye in the tale of Vamana, he appears in the sky as a flawless diamond. Astronomers confirm that Venus has the highest albedo, or reflectivity, of any planet. It does not absorb light, it generously reflects it back into space. It's fascinating to observe how the hierarchy of teachers is arranged in the heavens. His eternal opponent, Brihaspati or Jupiter, is there as well. They continue their endless dance, but now at a safe distance. Jupiter is large, golden, and slow, teaching gods about law, morality, and expansion. Venus, bright, swift, and dazzlingly white, teaches us how to find loopholes in those laws for happiness, pleasure, and the continuation of life. Shukracharya proved that with perseverance, one can rise from the very depths, from a world of betrayal and injury, to the highest peaks. Now, when you look at the morning or evening sky and see that bright, steady point shining best at dawn or dusk, know that it is not just a celestial body wrapped in clouds of sulfuric acid. It is the very Bhargava who once breathed smoke for 1,000 years. He is the one who knows the secret of immortality. He still watches over us with his single surviving eye. And he tests not our morality, as Jupiter does, but our vitality. Is the fire of life burning within us? Are we capable of love? Can we create? For Shukra, life without passion and creativity is not truly life. It is mere existence. His ascent to the sky is a reminder to us all. Even if you lose your sight and your kingdom, as long as you have inner strength, you can shine brighter than the sun. But Shukra's story as a planet does not end with biology and rain. His influence on the human psyche runs much deeper, as he governs the most dangerous and beautiful realm of our lives, our desires. At first glance, this seems like a glaring contradiction. We remember Shukra as a stern ascetic, hanging upside down over a fire, feeding on smoke and mastering thousands of complex mantras. How does this strict, one-eyed elder suddenly become the patron of lovers, poets, musicians, and dancers? Why does Venus in astrology represent comfort, luxurious fabrics, exquisite food, and sensual pleasures? Where is the logic? The logic is ironclad when seen through the eyes of Tantra. Shukracharya is the only great guru who states, renouncing the world is not the only path to liberation. His eternal opponent, Brihaspati, teaches the gods that the world is an illusion to be cleansed through duty and prayer. Shukra tells his disciples, the world is divine play, Leela. To know the Creator, you must know His creation in all its fullness. Venus does not call us to drown in passions. That is a primitive interpretation. Shukra teaches sublimation. Remember, he possesses Mrityu Sanjivani, the secret of revival. And what is life? Life is desire. As long as you desire to do something, love someone, or create, you are alive. When desire disappears, decay begins. Shukra, as the chief biologist of the cosmos, understands that the energy of attraction, often shyly called lust, is the fuel for everything. If this energy is wasted on mere primitive pleasure, it quickly runs out. But if it is elevated, it transforms into creativity. That is why all 64 traditional arts described in ancient texts are under the guidance of Shukra. These range from skills like singing and painting to the art of arranging flowers and crafting perfumes. A great artist, who spends sleepless nights perfecting a canvas, undergoes a discipline as rigorous as Shukra's ascetic practices in the forest. Such dedication is a form of obsession, and it is Venus who governs this fervour. Shukracharya teaches us that beauty is not merely about aesthetics, it is precise mathematics and strict discipline. Try becoming a ballerina or a virtuoso violinist by simply enjoying life without effort. You won't succeed. One must endure grueling training, pain, and limitations. Here, the true nature of the son of Afrigu reveals itself. Strictness in pursuit of perfect form. In horoscopes, a strong Venus grants not only attractive features, but also extraordinary charisma, a magnetic charm that influences others without force. This legacy dates back to when Shukra taught demons diplomacy, to enchant an enemy, captivate them, and make them fall in love. This power is far mightier than any weapon. However, there is another side that romantics often overlook. Shukra represents choice. The Sanskrit word karma means not only sensual pleasure, but desire itself. Shukra constantly challenges us. How will we spend our life's energy? On buying another expensive sofa or creating a masterpiece? His one-eyed nature, mentioned earlier, plays a key role here. Having lost physical sight, he gained insight into essence. In relationships, Shukra seeks not shallow attraction, but profound resonance. True love, according to Shukra, is seeing in your partner not just a convenient companion, but a divine spark, and being willing to serve that spark as devotedly as he served his wayward demon students. Interestingly, in the human body, Shukra governs not only the reproductive system, but also hormonal balance, the very thing that makes our eyes shine and skin glow. When someone is in love or passionate about an idea, they literally radiate from within. This is the inner Shukra awakening. Conversely, when we see a dull, lifeless person, astrologers say their Venus is afflicted, that they have lost their zest for life. Our hero, having endured humiliation, betrayal, and physical hardship, became the keeper of a vital secret: how to transform raw matter into pure light. He is a great alchemist who takes dirt, passion, and instinct and refines them into poetry, music, and the highest form of love, devotion. Today, Shukracharya is not a kindly grandfather handing out sweets. He is a strict examiner testing our qualities. Can we appreciate beauty? Can we love without selfishness? Can we find harmony in chaos? If yes, he grants us prosperity that even the mightiest forces cannot take away. If not, he immerses us in illusions and endless pursuits of pleasures that never satisfy. This is the great irony. The teacher of demons turns out to be the one who best shows us how to find the divine, not by fleeing to a Himalayan cave, but by staying here among people, art, music, and of course, love. After all, everything we do is to taste this sweet essence of life, guarded by our one-eyed mentor. Now, let's see how this ancient myth we've explored affects our daily lives. You might be surprised, but his name echoes in your life every week. Look at the calendar. The day most people eagerly await, the day when the work week's tension fades and rest begins, is Friday. This is no coincidence. In many cultures, this day literally bears his name. In European languages, the words for Friday French vendredi, Italian venerdì, Spanish viernes, all come from the Latin dies Veneris, meaning Day of Venus. The ancient Romans, like the Indians who call Friday Shukravar, knew this day was governed by a special energy. The energy of this day perfectly matches the character of the one-eyed mentor. It is a time for relaxation, art, romance and comfort. If Jupiter's Thursday demands learning and lawfulness, Shukra's Friday allows us simply to be happy and enjoy the fruits of our labour. Planning harsh discipline or dull meetings on this day goes against cosmic rhythms, but Shukracharya's legacy is not just in the calendar. There is a visual symbol inseparably linked to him that sparks much debate: the six-pointed star, or hexagram. In India, this symbol is called Shatkona, the oldest yantra, a geometric expression of divine balance. The upward-pointing triangle represents the masculine principle, fire, and the striving towards spirit, the principle of Shiva. The downward-pointing triangle symbolizes the feminine principle, water, and the descent of grace into matter, the principle of Shakti. Their intersection creates perfect harmony, which Shukra oversees. He is the only one who can unite opposites, spiritual ascent and earthly pleasure. He stands guard, preventing the world from falling into dry dogmatism or chaotic indulgence. Here we arrive at the final note of our story, the eternal struggle between two giants, Shukra and Brihaspati. This duel did not end in mythic times, it continues within each of us today. Brihaspati, the mentor of the gods, is our inner conservative voice. It says, "Do this because it is proper, follow traditions, study well, be right." It embodies wisdom and morality, necessary for society's stability. Shukracharya, mentor of demons, is our inner innovator and aesthete. It whispers, "Why do it like everyone else? Let's make it beautiful. Let's find a new way. Let's enjoy the process." It is the energy of passion, refinement, and diplomacy. Without it, life would become monotonous routine. If someone has too much Brihaspati energy, they become dull and rigid. Too much Shukra energy, and they risk losing their core while chasing pleasure. The art of life, taught by the story of Afrigu's son, is to balance these two forces. We need law, but we also need love. We need truth, but we also need beauty. So, who is Shukracharya in the world today? We tend to divide characters into heroes and villains, but Shukra breaks that mold. He is the teacher of those who err, behaving nobly beyond many who are considered good. He is a master who endured hell, hanging upside down in smoke, torn apart by a student he revived, and lost an eye to save another. He proved to the universe that the material world is not a rubbish heap to flee from, but a workshop. If you have knowledge, discipline, and passion, you can turn the lead of your fate into pure gold. Shukra is hope for those who do not see themselves as saints. He supports those who make mistakes, who fall, who live with passion but sincerely seek the light. He tells us, "Do not fear your desires, but do not be enslaved by them. Make your life a work of art, and then you will become immortal." Today, as you look at the morning star shining brightest in the east, remember this stern, one-eyed Brahmin. Remember his journey from the hurt boy Ushanas to the great cosmic force governing life's energies. His story reminds us that even from the deepest darkness, there is a way out if your spirit is strong and your intention pure. May Shukra's energy bring not only comfort and abundance into your life, but also the wisdom to appreciate the beauty in every moment. Ultimately, the meaning is not to conquer all enemies, as the gods and demons once tried, but to find harmony within yourself. And with that, we conclude our tale of the great mentor of the demons. Until next time, you've been watching Ancient Secrets. Thanks for watching and have a great day.